So we'll try to get maximum out of this particular program, and I'll also tell you how you can get maximum out of this particular program. If you do things on your part, you'll definitely get maximum out of this particular program. So we'll just see the plan for the next 6 lectures that you're going to do. Okay, can someone tell me how many questions are being expected very quickly? So approximately on an average 15 questions. That is on the, if you say a very conservative estimate. So sometimes it has been 20, sometimes it has been 18, sometimes it has been 17, sometimes it has been less also. But on an average, you can expect 15 questions. But to understand that this 15 questions, that if you see that 80% of the questions, that is what you're going to see, is coming from only very few selected topics. And if you're okay with this few selected topics, you can definitely get this 80% of the questions. So what you're going to do? So we're just going to cover all these topics. So the first topic that you're going to cover is the executive, just the scheme of the examination, scheme as to what we are going to do. Executive, if you see executive here, we're going to discuss both the union as well as the state executive. So which you can expect 2 to 3 questions in your prelims examination. And then we'll move on to the legislature. Once you're done with the executives, we'll move on to the legislature. Have you all got your handouts? It will be coming very shortly. Have you got the soft copy of the handout? If you haven't received that, you can just open the soft copy. I think it is on the way. You will get the copies. Legislature. So legislature includes both the parliament and the state legislature. So this is exactly the order that I'm going to revise the subject, where UPSC asks 3 to 4 questions from this particular area. When you talk of executives, you can understand union and state executives. Union executive includes topic like president, vice president. They are very important topic. Then we'll discuss in the state executives topic like governors. It also includes the topic of attorney general and advocate general. So from all these topics, if you see, I have just made this particular research in the last, I think the last 10 years, every year there's 1 or 2 questions that is coming from this particular way. Okay, so we'll touch upon those things. And then if you talk of legislature, you see parliament. So this is a very important area these days. Questions are being repeatedly asked from parliament, especially from topics like composition of the parliament. Then recently the Lok Sabha election is going to come, general elections. The Rajya Sabha elections are happening. So there's a lot of news about the Rajya Sabha elections. Then topics like speaker, topics like money bills, constitutional amendment bills, powers vis-a-vis the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, parliamentary committees. So these are all the areas every year the questions are coming. We'll touch upon all those things very quickly. And in state legislature, also topics like legislative council, the presiding officers in the legislative assemblies. So they're all repeated topics that has been asked in this examination. And then the next topic we'll deal with judiciary. So here our emphasis will be on the Supreme Court and the High Courts. So here you can expect 1 to 2 questions, especially the appointments of the judges in the higher judiciary, the powers and jurisdiction of the Supreme Court and High Court. So for example, there's something which is called as original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Can anyone tell me what is this original jurisdiction? Very good. So if there's any federal dispute, the center and the states can approach the Supreme Court. So these are the topics which is repeatedly asked, and it is also in the current affairs. So that is what we'll discuss when we take up the judiciary, mostly about these topics. And then the next part is, of course, one of the important part. So that the 4th part of our entire lecture will cover up these topics: Constituent Assembly, CA means Constituent Assembly, Preamble, Union and its territories, citizenship, fundamental rights, BPSP, and fundamental. So this will be the fourth part. So here, if you see 4 to 5 questions UPSC is asking, although the weightage that has been given to fundamental rights has been decreasing over a period of time, but we never know as to again UPSC will ask questions from these areas. So here, if you say that you should know some of the basic understanding regard to the Constituent Assembly, especially the composition of the Constituent Assembly, that is one area UPSC is asked question. So preamble, you'll have to understand whether the preamble is justifiable, can it be amended, is it part of basic structure? So we'll have clarity and we'll just quickly revise all those things. And similarly, in union territories, especially you should be aware of Article 3 of the Constitution. What is the difference between Article 3 and Article 3? So these are all some of the important areas. Now Citizenship Amendment Act 2019 has been, the rules has been recently formulated by the government and they started implementing. So citizenship topic may also be very relevant. And if you talk of fundamental rights areas like Article 14, Article 19, Article 21, preventive detention, punitive detention. So these are all important areas. We'll quickly try to understand religious rights, minority rights. We'll try to touch upon quickly on all these areas. Of course, in DPSP, the classification of DPSP, what does it mean? It is one justice, I believe, lecture. And then the amendments that has happened to DPSP. So these are all important areas where DPSP is focused. So we'll touch upon all these things. And fundamental duties, very simple questions do come. I'll let you know when we take up the respective areas. So this is how we'll proceed. So these are the 4 major topics. Majorly, if you see, more than 60 to 70% of the questions are going to come from these areas itself. But still, we want to cover up. So after that, we'll take up center-state relationship, local bodies, and constitutional bodies. So here you can expect again 1 to 2 pages. Your center-state relationship, especially the relationship between the center and the states in terms of the legislative, executive, and the financial relationship. We'll just quickly try to cover them. Local bodies, of course, you know, we'll try to understand the crux of the panchayat and the municipality. So we'll quick revision. And then constitutional bodies, to understand some of the very important constitutional bodies like the Election Commission, Public Service Commission, Finance Commission, Comptroller and Auditor General. So at any time you can expect questions from these areas. We'll try to revise up all those. Okay. So this is the major chunk from where UPSC has been repeatedly asking questions, but we are not going to stop here. So I'll just proceed further. And then we'll move on to one important area where UPSC has been emphasizing a lot of things is today important political themes. Important political themes. So can someone tell me what does it mean when I say important political themes? So this is the order that I'm going to cover the entire lecture. What do you mean by important political themes? Can you just guess a question where UPSC is asking for these areas? Very good. So today UPSC has been asking, trying to test the understanding of the students, like the concepts like what is democracy, what is constitutionalism, what do you understand by the concept of liberty, justice, rights, parliamentary democracy, federalism. So UPSC is asking at least 2 to 3 questions from this particular area. So we'll also have a lecture on this. We'll try to understand important political things. So you have a proper understanding. What do you mean by checks and balances? What is separation of powers? So I will have a lot of emphasis on this particular area so that you don't miss out on these easy questions. It's a basic understanding. Okay. So apart from this, there are also other areas I wanted to take up. So after completing all these things, then we move on to the next topic, where I'll cover important articles, amendments, and schedules. How many schedules are there in the Indian Constitution? 12 schedules. Very good. So this is one lecture that I will take. which will cover important articles. I'll cover 100 important articles in the entire constitution. That doesn't mean that UPSC is going to ask a lot of questions from articles, but through that we'll also revise a lot of things. Okay, so important articles will be covered. Amendments, few of the important amendments, including the latest amendment and these schedules. So here you can expect one question. UPSC has been consistently asking one question from this part. Either it can be from the article, or it can be from the important amendments, or it can be most likely from the schedules as well. So we'll have an understanding of this. So once we are done with this, then finally I'll take you to the miscellaneous topics. So miscellaneous topics where I'll touch upon the areas like emergency provisions, Legal Services Act. Has anyone heard of this Legal Services Act 1987? What this Legal Services Act is related to? Have you ever heard of National Legal Services Authority? Have you heard of 𝐂𝐭 𝐲𝐬? So these are all the areas which I'll touch upon. UPSC has been focusing on these areas. Every second or third year, they have been asking questions on 𝐂𝐭 𝐲𝐬. So usually students do not have a complete understanding. So I'll touch upon those areas. And then I'll touch upon RPA. There are two sets of laws under this particular topic, which is also there in your main syllabus, but is not explicitly there in the prelim syllabus. But UPSC has been asking questions from the representation of people. So what are the two legislations under the RPA? 1950 and 1951. So I'll quickly touch upon these things. So UPSC has been asking questions from this area also. And then mostly an ignored area, languages. So what are the languages that is to be used in the parliament, state legislature, Supreme Court, High Court? There's a specific provision in the constitution which is related to languages. So these are the areas. In addition to that, if I feel something is very important, legislation that has been there, I'll touch upon those things also, which has a possibility of being asked. So I would say miscellaneous topic, 2 to 3 questions. This is something which is very exhaustive. We cannot completely cover all the things. So I'll put every year UPSC does ask something which is called as miscellaneous areas, where UPSC can ask 2 to 3 questions. So this is what the weightage. So sir, can someone tell me what is the minimum and what is the maximum based on the assessment? So this is not just based on one particular year. It is based on the research that I've done for the last 10 to 12 years. That UPSC has been usually asking questions from these particular topics. 15 to 20, exactly 20. Okay, so whatever it is, let us assume 15 to 22 questions. So if we take a mean or an average, let us assume around 17 to 18 questions. So this is what UPSC has been asking. So minimum 15 questions. In few years, it has asked even 20 and little higher than 20 also. But let us have the average of that. Our idea out of this entire program that you're going to do for the next 36 hours, starting today, is that I wanted you to get 80% of these questions. Nobody can guarantee 100%. And if you work for 100% in one particular subject, you're going to miss out on the other subjects. So you are not here to master in a particular area, but you should know the basics in everything so that you can do it well. So let us assume that we are focusing, assuming if it is 15 or 17 questions. So our strategy is, if it is 18 questions, our strategy is somewhere to get 14 to 15 questions. That can be easily done if you properly follow whatever I'm going to teach. But having said all these things, I understand that this is not a basic foundation program, and this is just a revision program. So if you've done your basics, you will be able to follow me. And I'll give the topic so that you can come prepared when you come to the next class probably, so that it will also easy for you to recollect. Or if you want to ask me some doubt, it will be easy for you to ask those doubts as well. Okay. So this is the topic wise that I'm going to put. Okay. So you can have a look. So first I'll start with the executives, which I think it will take the entire day for me to complete the executives. I'll complete both the union and the state executives. And then the legislature, which will take me another 6 hours to complete, because these two are very bulk topics. And almost you get 5 to 6 questions from these areas itself. And then I'll proceed on to the judiciary. Then this is again a very big topic. And the remaining topics are very small topics. It will take me around half an hour, 1 hour to complete the remaining topics. topics, all the other topics. Okay. So this is the way that we'll be proceeding. And apart from all these things, before I start the subject, so apart from covering all these topics, what else will be covered? So for every topic, as and when I teach up a particular topic, a handout has been shared, has not yet been shared. A hard copy will be, I think, will be given. It is on the way. It will be given to all of you. So we'll be covering at least 125 MCQs, approximately 125 MCQs for including all the lectures, which is not previous year question. That's a multiple choice question, which is personally made by me. So you can solve those questions also as a part of this particular program. So which is going to add a lot of clarity to number of areas. Plus additionally, so once I'm done with all these topics, then I'll also cover around last 10 years of previous year questions from Polity. So which will be roughly around, again, let us assume that 125 questions of previous year questions. So we are also going to solve around 250 questions, 250 objective questions. That is again to give a lot of clarity. Okay. So this is what we are planning to cover. So this is the way that we will proceed with. So I think the handout is taking a little bit of time. Handout on. So otherwise, if it is not it, I just wanted you to open up the soft copy. Has it been shared? It has not been shared. It just. So I just wanted to go through that particular handout. So just go through all the questions very quickly once you get it. And then I'll start with my particular topic. I think it may take 1 or 2 minutes. Any doubts from your side? So this is a strategy that you're going to follow. Let us assume that for another 35 hours, I think approximately for 6 days. But what will be useful to all of you is, suppose let us assume today you are not sure that I told that you are going to start with the exercises. But before you come tomorrow, if it is possible for you, just cover up the legislature part, the parliament and the state legislature. So that the moment you come here, it is going to be easy for you to understand. And at the same time, whatever is your gaps, you can raise the questions and it will be clarified. Okay. And similarly, this is the way that I'm going to proceed. So you can cover all these topics beforehand, probably. You can come to the class. So in that way that your entire revision will also get completed in the class. All right. I think the handout is going to take some time, no issues. So let me just go to the first topic that I'm going to teach today. So just you can just get it from others as to what is the topic that you're going to do. Oh, good. That's great. Online students, is it clear to all of you as to what is structure that you are going to follow? Previously. This one? Ah. Shortly, the handout will be shared to all of you. So till the time you just follow whatever it is here. So you can see I've given the list of practice questions here. I just wanted you to go through this practice questions. But since the PDF is not yet out, we'll do this a little later. But just before I proceed, can you all just read the first question that I given? And can anyone tell me as to what you think is the answer? This is. What is the answer? With reference to the election of the President of India, consider the following statements. The value of vote of MLA varies from state to state. And then the second thing is the value of vote of MPs in the Lok Sabha is more than the value of vote of MPs in the Rajya Sabha. All right. So just look into the second question. Consider the following statement as per the Constitution of India. Statement 1. The notification to the election of the new president must be issued by the Election Commission of India anytime 60 days prior to the expiry of the term of the outgoing president. That's statement 1. Statement 2. The nomination paper of a candidate for election to the office of the president to be accepted by the returning officer requires it to be subscribed by 50 electors as proposers and 50 electors as seconders. So which of the statements given above is not correct? Yes, can anyone tell me the answer? What is your opinion? No explanation, just the answer. Okay, so you are saying that it will be 2 only. So the answer, not the explanation. We'll discuss all these things. I'm just trying to give a glimpse of what we are going to cover. Only B. Anybody else who has a differing opinion on this question? Yeah. So only one is correct. Okay, so that means that there are variations. We are all reading the same text, but polity is one area that unless and until that you have the proper understanding, there could be chances of our own interpretation. That's exactly what I'm trying to clear in the lecture, so that your understanding is to the core, so that you do not make any mistakes. Okay. So as I'll proceed, we'll understand as to what is the answer here. So I thought that if the handouts are distributed, I wanted you to go through all the questions for 10 minutes. You probably have a fair idea, and then I'll start the lecture. But I think unfortunately it is taking some time. No issues. Once the comes, I'll give you time. You can go through the questions, but I'll start with the lecture for time. Okay. So I'll quickly go. Try to take the notes as you can understand. That is exactly what will help you to revise it very quickly. Okay. So that it becomes so once you take the notes as you understand, then it will take hardly hours to revise the entire subject. That way I have to sign it. So can anyone check approximately how much time it will take? Or is it okay? Can I start the lecture? Or you wanted to take the notes in the handout that is being given to you? We can start? All right. Online students, can we start? Can I have your acknowledgement? Okay. All right. So we'll just proceed with the first topic. I said as per the lecture plan, the first topic that I'm going to take is the executives. So among the executives, the first topic that I'm going to test is the president. So I'll be covering both the union and the state executives, but of course, I'll not do it as it is in the text. The strategy that I'll follow is as it is in the Constitution of India. Because try to remember one thing that you should always remember is, although you are preparing from the Lakshmikant book, I'm not saying that it is not a good book. It's a wonderful book. But the professor or someone who is preparing the question paper is not going to read the lecture. They are going to set the question directly from where? From the Indian Constitution. So I may take a different route, but I'll cover most of the things that is relevant for the examination. Okay. So the first topic that I'm going to cover is the president. So if you look into the Constitution of India, what the Constitution says? The Constitution says that there shall be a president, and the president shall be the head of the Union Executive. So from this particular line, you should understand a lot of things. There shall be a president, and in fact, the Constitution says that there shall always be a president. What does it mean? Can our country function without a president? There shall always be a president. So that means you should also have an implied understanding that if the president dies, then there's a contingency plan for. You know what the Constitution says? If the president is not there, say for example, if the president has unfortunately died, so who will act as the president? Vice president. What if the vice president also dies? What does the Constitution say? The Constitution does not say it is a Chief Justice of, but it's a contingency plan, which I'll subsequently discuss. The Constitution only says if the president is not there, who will act as the president? The vice president. If the vice president is also not there, the Constitution does not say anything. The Constitution has given the power to the Parliament to make a law, and by that law, they can decide as to who can act as the president of India. So accordingly, who acts as the president when the vice president is also not there and the president is also not there? In fact, already a law has been made by the Parliament, that is President Contingency Act. According to that, who acts as the president? The Chief Justice of India. So one of my students was asking, what if the Chief Justice of India also dies? Such a situation has never arisen, but what if the Chief Justice of India also dies? The senior most judge of the Supreme Court. So another student was asking, what if the senior most judge of the Supreme Court also dies? Then the next senior most judge. So that is very unlikely to happen because we have 33 judges apart from the Chief Justice of India. But that is not given in the Constitution. So suppose if UPSC asks, as per the Constitution of India, which is not explicitly mentioned in the Constitution. So in the Constitution only says the president. If the president is not there, then who? It is the vice president. The remaining things are given as per the law made by the Parliament. And then it further says he shall be the head of the Union Executive. So when I say that he shall be the head of the Union Executive, so here you have to understand he is only the head of the Union Executive, not head of the state executive. So this also gives us an understanding that India is a federal political system. What do you understand by federal political system? That there exists a division of powers. So only for the union, the president is the executive. But for the state, when I say of federal, there is union and there's a state. And for the state, who is the executive? The governor is the head of the state executive. And further, when I talk of the executive, you have to understand that there are two types of executives. For both the types of executives in the union level, who is going to be the head? It is the president. So what are the further? You can divide the union executive into two types. What are the two types of executive? One is the political executive, and then you have the permanent executive. For both of them, who is the head? It is the president. Okay, so this is the basic understanding you should have from this particular. Now, the second thing that you have to understand is for anyone to become the president of India, the Constitution itself specifies certain qualifications. So that's something that you have to understand. So what are the qualifications that the Constitution provides? The qualification that the Constitution provides is first, he should be a citizen of India. So here it is very important that you understand that he can be a natural born citizen or a naturalized citizen. Is there any difference when I say that a natural born citizen and a naturalized citizen? Our Constitution does not make any distinction as to who is a natural born and a naturalized citizen. But some of the constitutions across the world, they do make this distinction. So can anyone tell me, although this distinction is not there, so it doesn't matter. So now you understand that can a person who is a citizen of USA and who has become an Indian citizen, let us assume through the process of registration or naturalization, you understand even a foreigner can become an Indian citizen. Can he contest election to the office of the president in India? That is very much possible. Okay, so you do not confuse about it. But some of the countries across the world, they allow only a natural born citizen to become their president or the head of the state. But that is not the Indian case. So first is citizen of India. Second is he or she should have completed 35 years of age. That is very important. So sometimes UPSC gives he should be of 35 years of age, or he should have attained 35 years of age. But there's a difference between the word attained and completed. So what the constitution says, completed 35 years of age. Citizen, completed 35 years of age. In addition to that, he has to be qualified for election to the Lok Sabha. This is what the constitution says. So what does it mean, qualified for election to Lok Sabha? So many students have a misunderstanding that he should be a member of Lok Sabha. That is not the case. It is not that he or she should be a member of Lok Sabha. If he or she should be a member of Lok Sabha, how many members are there in the Lok Sabha? 543. That means that only those 543 members, any one of them can contest the election. It only says he or she should be qualified for election to the Lok Sabha. That means, in addition to being a citizen of India, completed 35 years of age, the person who wanted to contest election to the President of India should also have all the qualification to contest election to where? Contest election to the Lok Sabha, which is not explained here itself, but rather it is given under Article 84 of the Constitution as to what are the qualifications one should possess to contest election to the Lok Sabha. So further, if you go there, what it is saying, that one should be a citizen of India, which is already covered here. And then if you look into Article 84, it also says he or she should not be less than what age to contest election to Lok Sabha? Should not be less than 25 years. So there it is not completed 25 years. So all these things has to be very clear. He or she should be 25 years of age or not less than 25 years of age, which is overruled by a specific criteria here, that is 35 years of age. And apart from that, it also says that the person who wanted to contest election to the Lok Sabha should subscribe to an oath in front of an authorized authority. As appointed by whom? As appointed by? In case of a person who wanted to contest election to the Lok Sabha, the person who wanted to contest election to the Lok Sabha should subscribe to an oath. That means while filing the nomination papers, he has to subscribe to an oath that the information that he has given in the nomination paper is true to the best of his knowledge. So this person in front of whom the nomination is made is usually called as the returning officer. Have you heard of this? So who appoints this returning officer? The Election Commission of India. So similarly, for the election of the president, who conducts the election? Who conducts the election to the president? The Election Commission of India. So here also, the person who is called as a returning officer in front of whom the president will make the nomination paper is appointed by the Election Commission of India. So who will appoint the person? The Election Commission of India, in front of whom the person who wanted to contest election to the president will file the nomination paper. He is also called as the returning officer. But the Constitution does not say who is to be appointed as a returning officer. It only says that the person who wanted to contest election to the president should subscribe to an oath in front of an authorized authority appointed by the Election Commission of India. So can anyone tell me who is usually appointed as the returning officer for the president election? Secretary General of what? Very good. So by that, but that's a conventional practice. So if they say that it is given in the Constitution, that is wrong. Okay. It does not specifically say, it is only a what? It is only a conventional practice. Usually that the returning officer who is appointed here, who appoints the returning officer, the Election Commission of India, it's only a conventional practice. Alternatively, it is either the Secretary General Lok Sabha or the Secretary General Rajya Sabha. Okay, 2022 there was a presidential election. Does anyone know who was appointed as the returning officer? Because recently elections have happened. Sometimes they can ask such one or two factual information also. In addition to, so who was appointed as the returning officer for the 2022 presidential election? It was Secretary General Rajya Sabha. So before that, in 2017, when the election happened, it was Secretary General Lok Sabha. So it happens alternatively. So first of all, a person who wanted to contest election to the Lok Sabha, I'm just coming again, should be a citizen of India, completed 35 years of age, and then he has to subscribe to an oath in front of whom? The returning officer, who is appointed by the Election Commission of India, who is usually the Secretary General Lok Sabha or the Secretary General Rajya Sabha as appointed by the Election Commission of India. But that is not given in the Constitution. It is only a conventional practice. And apart from that, so these things are directly given in the Constitution. Further, Article 84 says any other qualifications as may be determined by the law. For whom? for someone who's contesting election to the Lok Sabha. So the same qualification will also apply to whom? To someone who's contesting election to the office of the president. So similarly, as per this particular portion, a law has already been made, that is the Representation of People Act 1950. Do you know that the Representation of People Act 1951, in addition to what is given in the Constitution, puts one more condition for someone who wanted to contest election to the Lok Sabha. So for someone who wanted to contest election to Lok Sabha, what are the conditions? Citizen of India, should be 25 years of age, subscribe to an oath in front of the authorized authority. In addition to that, any other qualification as may be determined by the law. So that law, that is the Representation of People Act 1951. It says anyone who wanted to contest election to the Lok Sabha should also be an elector from any constituency in India. He himself should be an elector from any constituency in India. So what does it mean? That he or she himself should be an elector from any constituency in India to general election. So how many constituencies are there to the general elections? 543 constituencies. That means he or she should be an elector from any constituency in India. Out of 543 constituencies, what does it mean? He or she should be an elector means his name should be present in the electoral roll, or in other words, he should possess a voter ID issued by the Election Commission of India. That will be given by the Election Commission of India only when he is eligible to vote. So he should be eligible to vote. Unless and until he is eligible to vote, he is not allowed to contest the election. So similarly, someone who wanted to contest election to the office of the president, his or her name should be there in the electoral roll, and then only he will be eligible to contest election to the office of the president. Is it clear? Is it clear to all of you? But it can be anywhere. It doesn't matter. It can be in any constituency throughout India. So these are the conditions one has to fulfill. In addition to that, the Constitution says that he should not hold what is called as an office of. So this is also explicitly given in the Constitution. So that means for the president, what are the conditions? So what do you mean by qualifications? So qualification means only when you fulfill all these qualifications, he or she is allowed to contest the election. Now, the last thing that I'm going to discuss deserves a little bit of attention. He or she should not hold an office of profit. So is the office of profit defined anywhere in the Constitution? It's nowhere defined. And in case if it is nowhere defined, how do you know as to what is an office of profit? So what is your understanding of what is office of profit? Because the qualification says someone who wanted to contest election of the president should not hold on to office of profit. So what do you understand by office? Of course, if there's no clarity in the Constitution, the Supreme Court is the final interpreter of the Constitution. So can anyone tell me what the Supreme Court has said as to what is an office of profit? So once it has been asked in UPSC that the Constitution defines office of profit. The Constitution doesn't define office of profit. It is only the Supreme Court that has given an explanation as to what is an office of profit. Now, the Supreme Court has given this clarity in a number of cases. One such prominent case is the Jaya Bachchan case, where the Supreme Court has categorically said any office, either under the central government, the state government, or under any of the other local authorities, by a way of which a profit is receivable. That is very, very important. It is not that a profit is being taken. Even if the profit is receivable, say, let us assume that I occupy an office and then I take a salary. That means I'm taking a salary. But it is not required that you take a salary or someone is taking a salary. Even if profit is receivable, even if I'm not taking the salary, but there is a salary that is associated with it, then also it can be considered to be an office of profit. That means, what is the understanding you should have? Can a person who is in any government service, let us assume, or someone who is drawing government salary, can they contest election to the office of the president? Can or they cannot? Of course, then they have to resign. Once they resign, then they are no longer in the government service. So now tell me, can a sitting president contest the election? Can a sitting vice president contest the election? Can a sitting governor contest the election? Can a sitting ministers, be it under the union or under the state, can they contest election? But in all these cases, they do derive a salary from the government. Are they taking salary or? And if they take a salary, will it not be considered to be an office of profit? Although a person who wanted to contest election to the office of the president, the general rule is that they should not hold on to office of profit, but there are certain exceptions which is given in the Constitution. So what are the exceptions that is given in the Constitution? The exceptions are only for these posts: a sitting president, a sitting vice president, a sitting governor of any of the state, a sitting ministers, either under the union or under the state government. They don't have to resign from their post. Without resigning, they can contest. Okay, so this is the understanding we should have. Now tell me, what about a sitting legislator, an MP or an MLA, a MLC of any of the state? Can they contest election to the office of the president? How many of you think yes? This is a very important understanding. Anyone who's thinking no, they cannot contest the election. No, why? Okay, so you mean to say that the MPs, MLAs, MLC, the exception is not given, and in your opinion, they do draw a salary. So he probably seems to be right. Anyone who has got a counter argument? So many of you said that no, they can contest the election. So his argument seems to be right. Does anyone have a counter argument for? Because what he's trying to say is an MP, an MLA, or an MLC who's drawing a salary, probably it is an office of profit. So how can they contest the election? And that is not exempted also. Only very few posts are exempted. Is that argument right? There's no exception as such as the law made by the parliament when it comes to election to the office of the president. When it comes to election to the office of the president, only the constitution gives the exception. And the constitution gives only to these posts. But the basic understanding is an MP, an MLA, or an MLC is not an office of profit. Because what is an office of profit? Any job, either under the central government or under the state government or under the local authority, in all these cases, they are executive in nature. But an MP, an MLA, or an MLC, they are legislative in nature. They are not an executive post. And hence, it is not considered to be an office of profit in the first place. Okay, so they can definitely contest the election. So try to have this understanding. So all of you are right. But then the understanding is you all thought that it is an office of profit. No, it is not an office of profit. Yes, they are different from minister. A minister is an executive post. That's what I'm clarifying all these things. So ministers means try to understand. An MP who is appointed as a minister, he can contest the election. But an MP who is not appointed as a minister, who is just an MP. So although he can contest the election, but they are not exempted because they fall under the part of the legislature. So then it would not be considered an office of. Is that clear to all of you? So now these are the qualifications. Now can someone tell me the qualifications now to contest the election? The government teachers cannot contest the election. So all those things will come under the office of profit. Office of profit means what? As per the Supreme Court definition. Any office either under the center or under the state or under the local authority by a way of which they draw a salary, or even if the salary or the profit is receivable, that itself is sufficient enough to consider to be an office of profit. They are not an executive post, they are legislative, they are part of legislature. What the office of profit talks about is only those posts which are executive. They are part of the permanent executives. They are not part of the legislature. Is that clear? So this is the basic understanding you should have. So what are the qualifications one has to possess? Very quickly to wrap up this particular topic. The qualification one has to possess to contest selection to the office of the president. First is they should be a citizen of India. No distinction, citizen of India at the time of contesting election. Should have completed 35 years of age. They should subscribe to an oath in front of an authority who is usually the returning officer, which is appointed by the Election Commission of India. By conventional practice, it is usually the Secretary General Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. And then the fourth thing is, apart from that, he should also be an elector from any constituency in India. And then lastly, he should not hold on to any office of profit. Only when they fulfill all these conditions, they can file the nomination paper in the first place. Is that clear to all of you? So these things are given in the law. But sorry, these things are given in the constitution. But apart from that, there is also a law that is made by the parliament. The parliamentary law is not very important because UPSC will not go to that extent. But there are certain things which is given in the law, and that law is what is called as the President Vice President Election Act 1952. Has anyone heard of this act? So some of the provisions are also given in this particular act. And under that act, there is also a rule. This is also called as the President Vice President Election Rules 1974. Now, as per the President Vice President Election Rules 1974, they put forward certain other qualifications. And one such qualification which is there in the rules is that any person who wanted to contest election to the office of the president, okay. So whoever is contesting election to the office of the president, in order that nomination paper to be accepted, he has to be subscribed as proposers by 50 electors, and he has to be subscribed by 50 electors as seconders. So proposer someone that, suppose let us assume X is a person who is contesting the election. Only the electors can propose his name, that yes, I am supporting his candidates, and that has to be seconded by another 50 candidates. Now, who this electors means? Can anyone, all we are we eligible to vote in the presidential election? It has a specific electoral college. I hope you understand, which we'll subsequently discuss. So from those 50 people have to subscribe as proposers and 50 people have to subscribe as seconders. But that is not given in what? That is not given in the constitution. It is part of what? It is part of the President Vice President election rules. Okay, it is not there in the constitution. Now come to the second part. Come to the second thing, that is the conditions of the president office. Can anyone tell me quickly that what is the difference between qualifications and conditions? Already we have seen the qualifications for someone who wanted to contest the election to the office of the president. Now, what difference does it make? On the one hand, we are seeing something as qualifications, and then we are seeing something as conditions. Is there any difference between them? Of course, there has to be. So, what is the difference? Very good. So, qualification is someone to contest the election. These are the conditions one has to satisfy after getting elected as the president. So, many people may contest the election, but one person will be elected as the president. And someone who is getting elected as the president has to fulfill these conditions. So, what are the conditions that is given in the constitution? The first thing is he or she should not be a member of parliament or a member of state legislature. What does this mean? In fact, that means it is also clear from here, a member of parliament or a member of state legislature can contest election. So he can contest election, no problem. But if he wins the presidential race, if he wins the election, then he doesn't have to resign. He automatically, his office ceases to exist. So automatically it is assumed that he will not hold the office of the member of parliament or the member of state legislature. Okay. That means to have a very clear understanding, a member of parliament or a member of state legislature or someone who is occupying any legislative post, they don't have to resign. They can contest election. But if they win, then they automatically cease to hold the office. That is a condition of the office. The second thing is he should not hold on to any office of profit. So here it is an implied understanding. Apart from the office of the president, the person who is getting elected as a president should not hold on to any of the other office of profit. The same explanation which I already given, which will be continued to the office of profit. And then he is entitled. In fact, he is entitled for official residence and emoluments as determined by the parliament. That means, can someone elected as a president, can he say that he will stay in his own private residence? A person who is elected may have his own private residence. So can he stay there? As per the Constitution of India, he is entitled to Rashtrapati Bhavan and he has to stay here because of the security concerns and also for the administrative purpose. Okay. So he may go for official trip and all those things, but he is entitled for an official residence. And who will determine his emoluments? His emoluments are decided by the parliament. This is very important. Okay, there is a specific schedule in the Constitution with regard to certain emoluments. Can anyone recollect the schedule? Second schedule. So for certain dignitaries, at the time when the Constitution came into force, they have given certain payment, salary details there. But that is still only the time the parliament makes a law. Once the parliament makes a law, it can be changed. Okay. So here, the salary of the president is determined by an act of parliament. And most importantly, the emoluments of the president shall not be diminished during his term of office. What does this mean? It cannot reduce the emoluments. Can it increase? It can be increased during his term, but cannot be reduced to his disadvantage. That is very, very important. Okay. So with this understanding, you please quickly come here. Now try to solve this question. Of course, the second question we'll do it later. Now try to solve this question. Let me see how many of you are getting it right now. What is the right answer? How many of you say it is neither one nor two? Neither one nor two. So here the key word is consider the following statement as per the Constitution of India. What the Constitution says. Now, second thing, there's no problem. The nomination paper of a candidate for election to the office of the president to be accepted by the returning officer requires it to be subscribed by 50 electors as proposers and 50 electors as seconders. It is not in the Constitution. It is based on the rule under the President Vice President Election Act. What about the first statement? The notification to the election of the new president must be issued by the Election Commission of India anytime 60 days prior to the expiry of the term of the outgoing president. Is it mentioned in the Constitution? No. Sure. The Constitution doesn't say anything about this. Is there any constitutional provisions relevant to that? Okay, suppose let us assume that the incumbent president is going to retire and then the new president has to be elected. Does the Constitution say anything as to when the new president has to be elected? Is at all the Constitution saying anything regarding this? Very good. The Constitution categorically says that the new president election has to happen before the expiry of the term of the incumbent president. It is mentioned in the Constitution, but the Constitution does not say any time limit. So this 60 days time is mentioned in the President Vice President Act, Election Act. It is not mentioned in the Constitution. But the Constitution makes one thing clear: the election has to be completed before the expiry of the term. So again, it is not. Okay. So in both the cases, it is wrong because it is not mentioned in the Constitution. What is the answer here? It is neither one nor two. Okay. So these are the type of clarity that I am going to provide as we proceed further. Okay. So just quickly come to the next topic. Any doubt on the two topics that you have seen? Any questions? They don't have to resign. If they resign, it's okay. But there is no need constitutionally for an MP or an MLA, if they want to contest election to the office of the president, they don't have to resign. Okay, is it clear? Then what is the doubt? Any? The minister doesn't have to resign because although a minister is part of the office of profit, an exception is given to the minister under the Constitution. But for the MPs and MLAs, there's no exception, but they will not fall under the office of profit in the first place. Okay. Shall I move to the next topic? So we'll just proceed further. We'll try to understand about the election of the president. Every year there's a question from this topic. Very, very important topic. Okay. So let me just proceed with this particular topic. Online students, can I proceed further? Is it clear to all of you? Okay. So come to the next topic, that is the election of the president. Now, one thing that you have to very clear that the Constituent Assembly has decided that the president is going to be just a nominal executive. I'll also discuss about that a little later. Although the president is the head of the union executive, just a nominal executive. What do you understand by the concept nominal executive? Politically, if you see, an executive head could be a real executive or it can be a nominal executive. The Constituent Assembly, who drafted and who finalized the Indian Constitution, decided the president to be nominal executive. That means, although he is the head, he is not having much real powers. Because India is a parliamentary democracy, which I hope you understand, or we'll discuss that later when I take up the political theories. And because he is going to be a nominal executive, they decided the election to be an indirect election, not a direct election. And because it is going to be an indirect election, they decided that not the people will directly vote, only few people will directly vote. And the people who are eligible to vote is basically referred by the term what is called as an electoral college. So what is the basic understanding you have when I talk about electoral college? Electoral college means a group of people who will have the right to vote in certain elections. So in the presidential election, there's an electoral college. And the Constituent Assembly further decided who will be part of the electoral college. It includes elected MPs of both the houses. So when I say elected MPs of both the houses, elected members of both Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha. Can anyone tell me the elected MPs in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha as far as you remember? How many elected MPs in Lok Sabha? How many elected MPs in Rajya Sabha? Only these 15 the member of parliament will be eligible. What is the strength of Lok Sabha today? 543 or 545? I want just one answer. What is the total strength today? Sure, it's not 545. Okay, out of 543, how many are elected? 523 elected. Minus 12 in the Lok Sabha or in Rajya Sabha? Just 12 that you are talking. Okay, so today in Lok Sabha it is 543 and all the 543 members are elected because the provision for Anglo-Indian nomination has been done away with, which I'll subsequently discuss when I take up the Parliament chapter by the 104th Constitutional Amendment Act. Anyways, which I'll subsequently discuss. So in Lok Sabha it is 543, and what about Rajya Sabha? Today in Rajya Sabha it is 233 because in Rajya Sabha total 245, out of which 12 members are nominated. The nominated members are not part of it. So here it is 230. So only these many members in the Lok Sabha and in the Rajya Sabha are allowed to participate in the presidential election. They are part of the electoral college. And then the elected members of the legislative assemblies of all the states. So today how many states do we have? 28, 29, 28 states. So the elected members of legislative assemblies of all the states. So the key word here is the elected members. But today in all the states there are only elected members because in the constitution, if you see, similar to that of the Anglo-Indian nomination in the Lok Sabha, who can nominate the Anglo-Indians earlier in the Lok Sabha? The president can nominate 2 members maximum if he feels that the representation of the Anglo-Indian community is not there. So similarly, in the various state legislative assemblies, the governor can nominate 1 person, but that has also been done away with. So all the members today in the legislative assemblies are what? In the states are the elected members. So legislative assemblies are there. But what if a state is having a legislative council? The legislative council may have both elected as well as nominated members. Is the legislative council part of it? But try to have an understanding. A legislative council, be it an elected or a nominated member, the legislative council members are completely excluded from the electoral college. Elected members of the legislative assemblies of the state. So this was the original provision in the constitution, but the 70th Constitutional Amendment Act in the year 1992 made few changes to the constitution. So in addition to the elected members of both the houses of the parliament and the elected members of the legislative assemblies of the state, it also allowed the elected members of legislative assemblies of 2 union territories. One is the National Capital Territory of Delhi and other is Puducherry. They are also part of the electoral college. Because at that point of time, there was only these 2 union territories which was having a legislative body. And they are also part of the electoral college. But today, we have one more union territory, which is Jammu and Kashmir, which may also have a legislative body. So now, will they also be part of the electoral college in case of election of the president? How many of you think the legislative assembly members probably next election for the president, which may happen in 2027, if Jammu and Kashmir is still a union territory, let us assume, and if it is having a legislative body, so will they also participate in the presidential election? How many of you think yes? Yes. How many of you think no? So will they be part of the electoral college or what is the reason that you are trying to give? So try to understand this. Okay, please get your copies. I'll just complete this topic and then I'll give you 5 minutes to quickly go through all the questions. Okay, you don't have to answer the questions, just go through the questions, but not now. Let me complete the topic. Okay, just listen to me. 5 minutes and then you can go through the topics. Listen. Okay, now we have understood just who is part of the electoral college. So my question is, will the elected members of Legislative Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir, will they be part of the Electoral College? Absolutely not. Unless and until the constitution is amended, and it also includes the Legislative Assembly members of the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, which is explicitly mentioned in the constitution. Unless and until that happens, they will not be automatically part. But yes, the assembly members of Jammu and Kashmir can become part of the Electoral College in two ways. One is by constitutional amendment, or again, if Jammu and Kashmir is made as a state. If it is again converted as a state, then automatically the members of the legislative assemblies of the state are part of the Electoral College. Unless and until these two things happen, the legislative assembly members of Jammu and Kashmir will not be part of the Electoral College. Is that clear to all of you? So do not get confused, okay? Because specifically an amendment has been made, they have allowed only these two union territories. In fact, when Jammu and Kashmir was made as a union territory, it was one of the biggest criticism that you are excluding the members or excluding the people of that particular state from where? From being part of the election of the president, because indirectly, who is taking part in the election of the president? Their representatives. Is that clear to all of you? So try to have an understanding as to who is part of the Electoral College, who is not part of the Electoral College. So who is not part of the Electoral College? The nominated members of, the nominated MPs in the parliament, and then the legislative council members, and then of course, if the legislative assembly members are in Jammu and Kashmir, they are also excluded. You have to be clear about this. I'll just continue further. You just go through the questions and then I'll continue further. Just 5 minutes. Don't try to solve, think too much. Just go through the questions once. Let me see how many questions you're comfortable, so that if these doubts are there when I teach, it will automatically get clear in you. Online students, please go through the questions that is shared. I think you might have got a soft copy. Try to share, go through those questions. Anyways, at the end of the class, I'll solve all these questions if something is left out, but I just want you to go through. If you have gone through it, let me know, then I'll proceed. We'll discuss. After my class is over, if you have any doubt, you can ask me, because most of the doubt might get clarified during the process. Then, then, all right, listen. So now what you have understood is, you have understood the the qualifications for the president. We understood as to what is the conditions of his office, and we also understood as to who are part of the electoral college of the president. Now let us try to understand one of the most important area with regard to the prelims examination is the manner of the election of the president. As to how the president is elected, what is given in the constitution. So repeatedly questions are being asked from this particular area. Most of you might have an understanding, but there could be few glitches. So try to listen. So something you may gain. Or if you already know also, it's perfectly fine. It's like a revision to all of you. So what is the manner of the election of the president? So purposefully, I'm not mentioning much of the articles, which I'll do it separately. So right now, we don't have to worry about the articles. UPSC does not focus much on the articles, but rather the provisions. Manner of the election. So what is the process? How the president is to be elected? So first thing I already said, it is an indirect election. So can someone tell me why it is called as an indirect election? So direct election means people directly elect. So here it is an indirect election because people doesn't vote, but on behalf of people who are voting in the elections, people's representatives, either a member of parliament elected or a member of a state legislature or an elected members in the legislative assemblies of the union territories, whatever is allowed. So it's an indirect election because they thought that anyways, the president is the normal executive and he doesn't have much powers. You don't have to waste a lot of time, energy, money in having a direct election. That's the idea. But this is the most important thing. So how the election happens? It is following the process of proportional representation by means of single transferable vote, and the voting is by secret ballot. So having an understanding of these terms becomes very crucial. And once you understand these things, there are few inferences that you have to draw. Where the UPSC is asking a lot of questions. Okay, so this is exactly an important thing. Then you know how to go to the notepad. If you have to go to the notepad. So, so what it is saying with regard to the election of the president, it is saying that the president is elected through a process of what is called as proportional representation. Very quickly. By means of single transferable vote. And the voting is by secret ballot. So we'll have to quickly understand all these. That's what is very important. So first, let me go in a reverse order. What do you mean by secret ballot? Can anyone tell me what do you mean by secret ballot? Okay, what is the system that we follow in the general elections? General elections and the election to the legislative assemblies, do you follow secret ballot? So here also in the presidential election also it is secret ballot, which means that a person who is exercising his vote, the others will not come to know about as long as he doesn't reveal it to others. That's basically what is called a secret ballot. Okay, now tell me what is, so secret ballot is a very simple concept, but what I wanted to associate, what I want to relate this is, have you ever heard of this anti-defection law? Which anyways, I'll discuss when I take up the legislative part very quickly. Tomorrow, I'll discuss about the anti-defection law as a part of the parliament topic. But today, you know that defection is one of an important problem in our country. And mostly, you know that many times the political party might issue directions to their legislature. And somebody defy the party whip's direction, they are liable to be disqualified on the grounds of the anti-defection law. That is what the constitution says. Now, my question is, what if a particular party is saying to all its MPs or its MLAs that you have to vote to a particular presidential candidate? But what if a candidate votes contrary? Is he liable to be disqualified under the anti-defection? Yes, sir. Are you sure? Why? Because it is secret ballot. Nobody knows. And in fact, the Election Commission of India has also categorically clarified this. First of all, a whip direction cannot be issued. The political party cannot issue the whip direction. And even if they issue, nothing is going to happen because it's a secret ballot. So try to understand this, okay? So here the anti-defection law does not apply because it's basically a secret ballot system and the whip cannot issue the directions in this regard. I'm sure that in 2022 elections, you might have heard a lot of news that there was a lot of cross voting. Cross voting, the party has unofficially given some direction, but because they can calculate based on the number of MPs and MLAs, they can calculate the values, and then finally they have seen that the BJP presidential candidate has got more votes, more values than whatever MPs and MLAs they possess. That means there's some element of cross voting, but you cannot verify who has done this because it is through secret ballot. Now, the second thing that you have to understand is single transferable voting system. That is very, very important. What is a single transferable voting system? So, to understand the single transfer voting system, I'll have to just make you understand first this, which anyways, just a revision. You anyways knows what is this first past the post system. I've heard of this first past the post system. Where is this usually used? This first past the post system in general election, the election to the legislative assemblies, in all these cases. That is basically what is called as a first past the post system. In a very brief word, can someone tell me what exactly is this first past the post system? Whoever gets the more number of votes than the other candidates. That means there's no majority that is required. It is only that he has to make sure that he is getting more number of votes than all the other candidates. There's no minimum electoral quota that is required. While the general elections are based on the principle of first past the post system, the presidential election is not based on the principle of first past the post system. The presidential election is based on the principle of what is called as an electoral quota. It's based on what is called as an electoral quota. What do you mean by an electoral quota? An electoral quota means unless and until the person gets a minimum number of votes, even if he's getting more number of votes than the other candidates, but if he's not getting the minimum number of votes, he will not be declared to be the winner. So anyone who wanted to be declared elected as the president, he has to get the electoral quota. So can someone tell me what is this electoral quota? Total value of valid votes divided by how many person is to be elected as a president? One president. So it is 1 plus 1, 2 plus 1 is. So this is basically the electoral quota. So unless and until somebody gets his electoral quota, nobody will be declared elected as a president. Just for an example, this is a simple example. Suppose let us assume all the people in the electoral college are voting. If the total value of all the votes, we do not know what is the value of each and every person, but let us assume, I'm just giving a rough figure. If the total value of all the votes is 10 lakh, if the total value of all the votes, valid votes, because there can be invalid votes also, the invalid votes will not be counted. If the total value of all the valid votes is 10 lakh, then for someone to be declared elected as a president, how much votes or value of the votes he has to get? 5 lakh, 1 lakh. If it is 10 lakh, it is 5 lakh and 1 lakh. This much value, unless and until he gets this much number of values, he will not be declared to be elected as the president. And to achieve this electoral quota, the single transferable voting system helps us. Unless and until the single transfer voting system is there, if nobody is getting the electoral quota, suppose let us assume 4 candidates are contesting the election, which I'll explain very quickly. Suppose let us assume 4 candidates are contesting the election. Okay, so let us assume this particular figure. Do you know how the election paper of the president looks? Normally, there are 2 kinds of people. One is MP, another is an MLA. So normally, as per the rules and as per the law, which is not there in the constitution, who conducts this election for the president? The Election Commission of India, which is given in the constitution. But normally, where the polling happens, do you know where the polling happens? It happens in the Parliament House and it happens in all the state legislatures. Simultaneous, the presidential election. The MPs and MLAs, the MPs probably will vote in the Parliament House and the MLAs will vote in the respective state legislature. But if I ask you this particular question, can an MP vote in any of the state legislature itself if they want? Can an MLA vote in the Parliament House? That is also possible. That is also possible as per the rules. The rules only say that they have to inform to the Election Commission of India 10 days before the election. Accordingly, the Election Commission will do the thing. So these are all rules. You don't have to understand. But one thing that I want to tell you is, as per the rules, there are two color votes that is given. One to the MPs and MLAs. For the MPs, the color of the vote is green. And for the MLAs, the color of the vote is pink. Okay, so just to differentiate between the MPs and MLAs. So these are all extra information in case if it is asked examination. Now, how the vote looks? So this is how the vote looks. Every ballot paper will be like this. Every ballot paper will have two columns. One is the name of the candidate, and other is the preference. One of the interesting feature of the single transfer voting system is that a person who wanted to vote in the election, suppose you go and vote in the general elections. I hope that you might have an experience of voting in the general election or in the election to the legislative assembly. For how many candidates you can cast your vote? Is it possible to vote more than one candidate? Today with the EVM, it is not possible. But before EVM, was it possible? It was possible. The only thing is your vote will become an invalid vote. Otherwise, you can vote to multiple things. But in a single transfer voting system, what happens is, suppose let us assume that there are 4 candidates named as A, B, C, and D. These are the 4 candidates who are contesting election. So for every person, elector, who is part of the electoral college, they will get a vote ballot paper like this. If he is an MP, it will be in green color. If he is an MLA, it will be in pink color. So suppose let us assume a person X who is part of the electoral college wanted to cast his vote. Now what he can do in single transfer voting system is, he can give his first preference. Not only his first preference, he can give his other preference also. So this is very much possible. That means for X, who is part of the electoral college, you want A to become the president. But the other candidates might choose B as the first preference. So X idea is, suppose if A is become the president, it is fine. If A is not becoming the president, then you want who to become the president? B to become the president. If B is not becoming the president, you want C to become the president. If they are not becoming the president, you want D to become the president. So this is very much possible where the preference or the voting system is single transfer voting system. Now further. Now suppose let us assume in this way all the members in the electoral college are casting their vote. And then one more information before that. Now, is it mandatory for every voter or every elector who is part of the electoral college to exercise all the preference? Is it mandatory for them? It is not mandatory. But what is mandatory as per the law or as per the rules is that they have to give the first preference. If they do not give the first preference, then that vote is an invalid. And if they give multiple first preference, then also it is an invalid. So they have to give only one first preference. Otherwise, it becomes an invalid. Okay, now all the members who are part of the electoral college are exercising their vote. They completed the voting. Now, after they completed the voting, then the counting will start. It will be done by the Election Commission of India. Now, suppose let us assume A has got 40% first preference. Assuming we do not know the value, but let us assume he has got 40% first preference. B has got 30% first preference. First preference. We are talking about the first preference because the Election Commission is going to count only the first preference, not the other preference. C has got 30% first preference. D has got 30%. 20% first preference. D has got 10% first preference. Now, who will be declared as a winner? Nobody will be declared as a winner because nobody has got the electoral quota. Because to be declared as a winner, how much vote one has to secure? 50% plus 1 vote. But if it is a first past the post system, we would have declared, but the Constituent Assembly thought that no first past the post system. We want an electoral quota. Okay, now nobody will be declared winner. Now I'm thinking, what is the rationality as to why the Election Commission has decided like this? Why they brought in the single transfer voting system? But we want a president. Maybe this president is going to retire. The new president election has happened, but nobody is getting the electoral quota. So what is the option in the hands of the Election Commission of India? If single transfer voting system is not there, let us assume. Probably they can go for re-election. The re-election also there is a possibility nobody is getting electoral quota. Again election, nobody is getting electoral quota. So in order to avoid this, they brought in what is called a single transfer voting system. Now what happens? if nobody is getting the electoral quota, but this has never happened in the history. In fact, in the first round of voting itself, all the president have got the electoral quota, which is unlikely to happen, but this is a backup system. So the person who has got the least number of first preference is ruled out of the race. So whoever has given first preference, let us assume to B, they would have given second preference to either A, B, or C. So all those second preference would be converted as their first preference once D is ruled out of this. So this 10% vote is to be shared among all the candidates. Suppose let us assume that his vote share is increasing to 43, his vote share is increasing to 35, his vote share is increasing to 22. So who will be declared to be the winner? Nobody. So who has got the least number of first preference? C. So C will be ruled out of the race. So whoever has given first preference to C, they would have given second preference to either A or B. That will be converted, transferred as their first preference. So now let us assume he has got out of this 22, he has got 10%. So he is now becoming 53% and he has got 12%, which means 47%. So now who will be declared to be the winner? A would be declared to be the winner. So in order to make sure that somebody is emerging as a winner, you need to transfer the vote, and that's basically what is called as the single transfer voting system. So is it clear? Secret ballot and single transfer voting system. Now the next thing that you have to understand is proportional representation. See, this class will be useful to the student who already revised, who knows the basic. Because here I'm not there to explain the very basics of it, is just to make you revise the things very quickly. So what do you understand by proportional representation? In the elections, when it comes to general elections or the election to the Legislative Assembly, we follow the principle of what is called as one man, one vote, and one vote, one value. What does this mean? One man, one vote, and one vote, one value. Every vote has the same value, and everybody possesses only one vote. But here you follow the principle of what is called as one man, one vote, which means he was part of the electoral college, but not one vote, one value. The value of vote of the people or the person who are part of the electoral college may vary from state to state, because they follow the principle of what is called as proportional representation. The idea is there are big states in India, there are small states in India, there are states with huge population, there are states with low population. So every state should have a say in electing the president of India proportionate to their population. So accordingly, the value of vote of an MLA is going to vary from state to state. In fact, no two MLAs from different states will have the same value for their votes. And that's basically what is called as the principle of proportionate representation. And in order to ensure proportionate representation, they are also given a formula in the Constitution. So to calculate the value of vote of a MLA. So can someone tell me how to calculate the value of vote of an MLA? The value of vote of an MLA is calculated by the total population of the state divided by number of elected MLA in that particular state multiplied by 1 by 1000. Now see, interestingly, the population of the state will vary from state to state. This is a variable. And the number of elected MLAs will vary from state to state. When both the things are variable, so definitely it is going to be different value for different state. So the value of MLA of one state is the same. Say for example, if you take an MLA from Punjab, all the MLAs from Punjab will have the same value. But what about Punjab and Haryana? It will be different. What about Haryana and Tamil Nadu? Or for that matter, Punjab, Haryana and Tamil Nadu, it is going to be different. So this is one important inference that you should keep in your mind. Many times has been asked in UPSC. The value of vote of an MLA from different state is going to be the same or different? Value of MLA from different state is different or same? It is different. And it is based on what? Basically, the population. And apart from that, now see, the population is there in the numerator. So any state which is having more population is likely to have more value or less value for the MLA. More value, and that's basically the idea of what is called as proportionate representation. It is proportionate to the population. Is that clear to all of you? So this is the value of vote of an MLA. So what is the inference we have to draw? the value of vote of an MLA is different in different states. Now, apart from the MLA, the MPs are also there, who's part of the electoral college. So for the MPs also, a formula is given. Value of vote of an MP. So how do you calculate the value of vote of an MP? So to calculate the value of vote of an MP, again, the Constituent Assembly has given a formula which says that value of vote of all the MLAs. All MLAs summed up. So when I say value of vote of all MLAs summed up, it includes the MLAs of all the 28 states, plus it includes the MLAs in case of National Capital Territory of Delhi and Puducherry. You sum up all the values divided by total number of elected MPs. This is constant. How much is the total number of elected MPs? 543, 233. So that is roughly equal to 708. That is roughly, you don't have to remember this. That's roughly equal to 708. This is the value of vote of an MP. Now, which state has the highest population? Uttar Pradesh. Does anyone from Uttar Pradesh here? Do you know what is the value of an MLA in case of Uttar Pradesh presidential election? If you have, it's okay. You don't have to remember that. If you know, it's okay. Otherwise, also it's perfect. Does anyone know value? The value of vote of an MLA from Uttar Pradesh is 20. MLA in case of Uttar Pradesh. Right. So similarly, it is as low as 6, 7, 8 in case of some northeastern states. It depends upon the population. But what is the value of vote of an MP? 708. What is the value of vote of an MP in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha? Is it different or is it the same? Same or different? It is the same because there's only one formula, value of vote of a MP. So try to understand the value of vote of an MP is same, irrespective of whether he is an MP in Lok Sabha or whether he is an MP in Rajya Sabha. But what about the value of vote of an MLA? Will it vary from state to state? It is going to vary from state to state. And if you compare between the value of vote of an MP and an MLA, which is highest? An MP is always going to be more because a state like Uttar Pradesh is 208. Then compare the smaller states. So the value of vote of an MP is far higher than the value of vote of a MLA, irrespective of the state. So these are all some observations you have to have. What about the value of the MPs cumulatively in Lok Sabha compared to value of MPs cumulatively in Rajya Sabha? Which will be higher? Lok Sabha, because Lok Sabha has more MPs. So these are all some inference that UPSC has already asked questions. So try to remember these inference. Most importantly, questions are coming from this formula, the inference, and to try to understand secret ballot so the whip does not apply and there is no anti-defection law. So these are some areas UPSC is asking. One last thing that I wanted to say is that now you try to understand the basis or the basic thing that we need to know is the population. Unless until you do not know the population, you cannot calculate the value. So how do we know the population? So we need to have this particular data. So from where do we get this population data? From the census. If you look into the constitution says that the latest census has to be used. The original constitution, what is the word that is used? Whenever the election is happening, the latest census has to be used. So for example, today we have done the 2022 presidential election. So what is the latest census we have? Very good, 2011 census. So ideally we should have used the 2011 census, but do you know which census we are using right now? 19? Which census? Any idea? Which census we are using now, presidential election? Very good. We are right now using the 1971 census. Which census we are using right now? We are using the 1971 census. Now, what happened after the commencement of the Constitution? In the year 1976, by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, 1976, a constitutional amendment was made. And this amendment said that the census that you are going to use, they amended the word latest census. Instead of the word latest census, they amended and they replaced this word with the latest census was 1971 census. 1971 census to be used till the year 2000. Till which year? Till 2000. But now you can ask me a question. Today we are in 2024, but this amendment is only till 2000. So that means post 2000 again the latest census word will come, because the word latest census is suppressed only till the year 2000. So what happened in the year 2001 by the 84th Constitutional Amendment? Just the double, just try to remember this. The 84th Constitutional Amendment Act in the year 2001, again the provision was amended, and they suppressed this latest census till, or the 1971 census is likely to continue till what? Not till 2026. That is a wrong understanding. Till the first census after 2026. Till the first census after 2026. So we are not sure when the first census is likely to happen after 2026. Most likely maybe in 2031. But if it is postponed for some reason, we do not know. 2021 we should have the census, but it has not happened yet. So till the first census after 2026, suppose if it is in 2031. So whenever the first census happens after 2026, then that census will be taken into account. So till that point of time, which census is to be taken into account? For all the presidential election. So for example, 2027 next presidential election is going to happen. So which census will be taken into account? 1971 census. And then the next election will be 2032. By 2032, if 2031 census has happened, then 2031 census. Otherwise, which census? Again, 1971 census. Okay. So this is the information that you should know, very, very important. But does anyone know why this amendment was brought in, which is beyond maybe the reason may not be asked in the prelims examination? Just trying to understand. Does anyone know why this amendment was made by Indira Gandhi? Very good. In fact, what happened, that was also an emergency era. Remember, 1976, third national emergency was there. And one of the important program of the union government at that point of time is to reduce the population. In fact, they directed the states to reduce the population, and many southern states have taken population control measures. On the one hand, number of southern states started reducing the population, but many of the northern states, they have not controlled the population. They kept on increasing the population. Then the southern states made the demand to the center that we are controlling the population based on your direction, but on the contrary, the northern states are increasing the population. Then the center asked, okay, what is the concern? The concern is this, that if we reduce the population, then the value of vote of our MLAs are going to reduce. But on the contrary, the northern states, their MLAs, the value is going to increase. So the center said, don't worry, we'll fix a census prior to 1976. We'll fix a census in 1977 so that you don't stand to lose, whether you increase or you decrease the population. Okay, so that's the logic. Is that clear to all of you? I'll just go back to the slide. Minimize. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so whatever I said, I cleared here. Now let me just come to this question. Let me see if there's any question related to the president election. Come to question number 1, the first question that I given. So now try to solve this question. It is a relatively easy question. I hope you will be able to solve this question. With reference to the election of the president in India, consider the following statements. The value of vote of MLAs vary from state to state. Is that true? Is it true? And also, along with this, try to remember the formula also. Sometimes they can ask some questions from the formula also. Okay. So the value of vote of an MLA varies from state to state. That is definitely true. Okay, we understood that. And then the value of vote of an MP in the Lok Sabha is more than the value of votes of MPs in the Rajya Sabha. Is it true or false? The value of vote of MP in the Lok Sabha is more than the value of vote of an MP in the Rajya Sabha. So this particular thing is wrong because the value is the same. But what if they use the word cumulative values of MPs? So then it is Lok Sabha is more, because anyways Lok Sabha is having So this is wrong. So what is the answer here? 1 only. Okay. So let me see if we can solve any of the other questions. Okay, so try to solve this question. I think we have discussed this also. Okay, no issues. Now, up to this question. Answer the following statement. Statement 1. As per the conventional practice, the returning officer for the presidential election is usually Secretary General Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. Is that true? That is true. But is it mentioned in the Constitution? It is not mentioned in the Constitution. This is true. The value of vote of MPs in the Lok Sabha is more than the value of vote of MPs in the Rajya Sabha. What is this? Okay. Okay, so statement 2, anti-defection law applies in case of voting in the presidential election. Does it apply? It does not apply. So we have seen it very categorically. As per the president election rules, it is mandatory for an elector to give all preferences at the time of voting. Is it mandatory? Although it is, he may give, but it is not mandatory. But what is mandatory? First preference. Otherwise, the vote will become an invalid. Okay. So it is not mandatory. So what is the answer here? So here you should also make understand which. If they use the word which, that means they're specifically asking the statement number. But instead of which recently UPSC has brought in this particular pattern. Instead of the word which, if they use the word how, they're not specifically looking for the statement number, but they're looking for the absolute number of statements. Totally, how much or how many of them are right or how many of them are wrong. So in total, how many of them are wrong in this, or how many of them are here? It is incorrect. So how many of them are wrong? 2 only. Okay. So sometimes students look 2 is also wrong, 3 is also wrong. So which one I'll go? But the word that is how many. So please make note of this when you answer. Answer is B. We'll be in a position to solve any of the other questions based on what we discussed. Based on what we discussed. Okay, so look into this particular question also. Consider the following statements regarding the President of India. The electoral college of the President includes members of both the houses of the Parliament, both elected and nominated. Is that true? It does not have any nominated members, only the elected members. Because of the nomination, it is wrong. A sitting member of the Parliament or the state legislature cannot contest election to the office of the President. Is it true or false? He can contest the election because it is not an office of office. So you were asking this doubt. Is it clear to you? It is not an office of office. So it is wrong. The emoluments and allowances of the president are determined by an act of parliament. Is that true? It is to be determined by an act of parliament. This is true. So how many of the statements given above are incorrect? What is the answer? It is 2. Is that clear to all of you? Are we in a position to solve any of the other questions? Next question can we solve? Come to the next question. Consider the following statements regarding the President of India. In case of vacancy to the office of the President, the new President must be elected within a period of 6 months in all cases. Okay, so this I have not discussed it. But anyways, let me see as to what you think as the answer. Just the answer, no explanation. But this requires a little bit of explanation, which I'll proceed further. Okay, just tell me how many of you think statement 1 is correct and how many of you think it is incorrect. How many of you think it is correct? Statement 1 is correct. Anyone who thinks it is incorrect? Okay, so the answers again differ. So that is how polity is little tricky. So to understand all these things. Okay. Come to second statement. Any election dispute regarding the election of the president can be challenged only in the Supreme Court. Any dispute regarding this? Of course, there should be no doubt, because the only forum where you can challenge the election of the president is only the Supreme Court of it, not in any of the other forums. That should be clear, but I think there's a little bit of contrary opinion among the students whether it is right or wrong. I'll discuss now. Okay, one question before I proceed further. Who can challenge the election of the president? Can anyone challenge the election of the president? That information is not given in the constitution, in fact, but it is mentioned in the election of the president and the vice president election act 1952. So who can challenge the election? Whom do you think by logic? Of course, a candidate should have a right. Somebody who lost the election, probably he feels that it is not a free and fair election, so probably he should have the right. Okay, apart from him, anybody else? The voters, the electors? Yes, the electors can also challenge, but there's a minimum number that is there. If somebody was contested election, he can separately challenge the election. But if an elector is contesting the election, a minimum number of electors have to come together, and that minimum number is 20 electors have to come together to contest the election. Okay, I'll discuss more information as we'll proceed. Okay, so quickly come to there. This question we can solve. This question we can solve. We'll solve this and then I'll go to the continuation of the topic. Okay. Okay, so solve this question. Consider the following: proportional representation, single transferable voting system, open ballot. Which of the above mechanism is or associated with the system of presidential election in India? Which is associated with this? I think except for the open ballot, which is not the case. You have just seen it is secret ballot system. Proportional representation is there. Single transferable voting system is there. Which of the above mechanism is or associated with the system of the presidential election? So it is 1 and 2. So is it clear? All right. Now come back to the discussion again. So we'll discuss. We'll cover a few more topics, and then we'll try to solve some questions. Okay. So this is very, very important. Many students probably do not have the full clarity, especially with regard to the vacancy to the office of the president. I'll just discuss that, but before that, I'll cover a few important provisions in the constitution. So probably most of you know what is the term of the office of the president? 5 years. Can the president again contest the election? Is there any limit on how many terms the president can contest the election? Is there any limit? No limit. But still, we have been following a constitutional convention that no president in our country has been more than 2 terms. But that's merely considered to be a conventional practice. But there's no limit in the constitution. This convention may be changed also. It has not happened till this point of time. But there's no limit. This 5 years tenure, which has got a fixed tenure, you know when it starts. Is it from the date of election? Is it from the date of assuming the office? Or is it from any of the other date? And it is specifically given in the constitution, this 5-year term is from the day he assumes the office. Because you'll understand that although a president may get elected, he may not assume the office immediately for some reason. Suppose let us assume the president is elected and then he is suffering some injury or he has met with an accident before he assumes the office. So whenever he'll assume the office, from that particular day, his tenure is what? His tenure is 5 years. And if the president wants, he can resign from his office anytime. All that he has to do is he has to submit his resignation to the Vice President of India. But otherwise, he can resign. And he can also be removed from his position. But very, very important, the only ground on which he can be removed from the post of the president or from his office is on the grounds of violation of the constitution. But what amounts to violation of Constitution? Is it mentioned anywhere in the Constitution? So what does it mean by violation of the Constitution is not defined. It's not defined in the Constitution. But what is the ground on which he can be removed? For the violation of the Constitution. But however, we are not sure as to what can be seen as violation of the Constitution, because only when such a situation arises and then there's no clarity, the matter may go to the Supreme Court. So we don't have any clarity. But can you just think of what can be seen as violation of the Constitution? Any example that you can take, okay, this can be seen as a violation of the Constitution. Very good, simple thing that you can say is, yes, office of profit is a condition of the office. When he breaches the conditions of the office, it can be seen as violation of the Constitution. Very good. The Constitution says that he has to act in accordance with the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. He shall act in accordance with such advice. So whenever he acts contrary, it can be seen as a violation of the Constitution. So all these things can be seen as the violation of the Constitution. But however, it is not defined in the Constitution, except that the president can exercise certain situational discretion. And there's also a difference between what is a situational discretion and a constitutional discretion, which I'll subsequently discuss. You can just keep thinking about this. Which I'll subsequently discuss as a topic, which I'll discuss these two things. Except that when the president can exercise a situational discretion. So under such a situation, he doesn't have to act in accordance with the aid and advice. But except for those situations, he has to act in accordance with the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. Otherwise, it can be seen as a violation of the Constitution, which I'll discuss later. And then he can continue to hold the office even upon the expiry till the successor assumes office, which is very, very important. So this is exactly where you have missed, some of you, when I discussed that particular question. Now try to understand this. Whenever the old president is going to end his term, or his term is coming to an end, and then the Constitution says that the new president has to be elected before that. So the new president election has to be completed before the term of the old president is getting over. But unfortunately, let us assume the new president election is over, the new president is elected, or someone who is to assume the office is elected, but on the day of the completion of term of the old president, the new president is not able to assume the office. It may happen or it may not happen. It may happen, he met with an accident, suddenly he is not feeling well, he is not able to assume the office. But the Constitution says that there should always be a president. There should always be a president. The country cannot function without a president. Now, in this case, so who is going to be the president? Is it the old president, or is it the vice president who will discharge the duties of the president? Because the new president is going to expire, the term is going to expire. Now, in this case, try to understand, in this case, the vice president will not act as a president. Who will act as a president? The outgoing president would continue to act as the president. The outgoing president continues to discharge the duties of the president, although his term has expired, but he continues to hold. The vacancy has arisen. For what reason the vacancy has arisen? The vacancy has arisen because of the expiry of the term. But in this case, but still, who is continuing as a president? The outgoing president. So now, what is the statement that I have given there? The statement that I have given in that particular question, if you read, can anyone read that particular statement? The first statement. Please read it loudly. Can you please read that statement again in case of? Okay, so in this case also the vacancy has arisen. But in this case, because of the expiry of the term, the new president has to be elected within 6 months, or he has to be elected even before that. He has to be elected even before that. So the key word here is in all the cases. So first we'll have to understand as to what are the reasons by which the vacancy can arise to the office of the president. So if the vacancy is because of the expiry of the term, and the new president is not able to assume the office, in this particular case, the new president has to be elected even before that. So if you say in all the cases, the absolute statement is wrong. And this is one key that you can also remember while solving the questions. Mostly when the question comes with only, or if it is in a very absolute statement, you'll have to think twice. And most of the times it's a negative statement. Most of the times. I'm not saying in all the cases. Probably 90% of the times it's a wrong statement. I'll give further explanation. Okay, I'll give further explanation to that. Let's proceed further as of now. And one more constitutional provision that is given is, so someone who is elected as a president, his 5-year term is going to start only after he assumes the office. But it's a constitutional requirement before he assumes the office, he has to be administered an oath by the Chief Justice of India. And in case if the Chief Justice of India is not available there, the senior most judge of the Supreme Court can administer. Okay. And of course, he is eligible for re-election. There is no constitutional limit on the terms he can contest the election. Is that clear to all of you? Any of these provisions can be just asked as a simple fact, the examination. Now, we have just seen that the president can be removed from his office. So now we'll have to understand, if at all the president is removed from the office, is there any procedure that is laid down in the constitution? In fact, a procedure for impeachment is given in the constitution. So let us try to understand the procedure for that particular impeachment. All right. So what is the procedure for the impeachment? The first and foremost thing that you have to understand is, who is the authority to remove the president? To impeach the president. It is the parliament. There's no other authority. It is the parliament which is the authority. So just quickly listen here. There are a few things that you may have to keep in your mind. So the authority to impeach the president. Just a couple of small topics. I'll complete today. I wanted to complete the entire executives. So the idea is, once you attend today's class, you have taken note. So your revision should be over, and henceforth you just need half an hour or 1 hour to complete the entire executives. That's the way that I have designed this. So impeachment of the president, who is authority to remove? It's a parliament. But certain procedures are laid down in the constitution itself, that the parliament has to remove the president by introducing a proposal. A proposal has to be introduced for the removal of the president. So who can introduce this particular proposal? Any member of parliament can introduce. Can it be introduced in either houses? Can it be introduced in either houses? So this is very, very important. Such a proposal can be introduced by any MP, and it can be introduced either in the Lok Sabha or in the Lok Sabha. But that proposal should have the reason as to why the president is to be impeached, or why they wanted to introduce such a motion. What is the charge against the president? And any MP, before introducing such a proposal, they have to give a prior information to the president that we are going to introduce such a motion against you. And that prior intimation has to be given to the president before 14 days. This is constitutionally mandated. So before how many days it has to be given? So that means the first step is that the members of the parliament has to intimate the president before 14 days. And after he is given a 14 days of notice, then this resolution can be introduced. Where it can be introduced? In either houses. But before the presiding officer will accept, because they have to introduce with the permission of the presiding officer. Before the presiding officer will accept such a motion to be introduced or such a resolution to be introduced in the house, the presiding officer has to check one thing, whether it has been supported by minimum 1/4 of the members of the house for the introduction. So that means a particular person may propose, a particular MP may propose, and he may intimate the president. But to introduce it in the house after 14 days, how many people have to support that for the introduction? Minimum 1/4 of the members of the house. So minimum 1/4 members of the house. So only then the presiding officer may allow for its introduction. Okay, now let us assume it is introduced. So once it is introduced, it will be discussed in the house, in whichever house it is introduced. If it is introduced in the Lok Sabha, there will be discussion. And after the discussion, it will be put to vote. and this proposal has to be passed with a specific majority. Can anyone know what is the majority that is required? What is the majority? It is called a special majority. But there are different types of special majority. There's not only one single type of special majority. There's only one simple majority, there's only one absolute majority, there's only one effective majority. But there are different types of special majority under the constitution. So here the majority that is required is special majority. So what is this special majority? Can anyone tell me? It is not less than 2/3 of the total membership of the house. So that is very important. Not less than 2/3 of the total membership. So how do you calculate this? Say for example, if it is introduced in the Lok Sabha, what is the majority that you need? It's just as simple as that, 2/3 into 543. We are not concerned about how many members are present, how many members are voting, how many are absent. Absolutely no need. It's only 2/3 into 543. That is the authorized strength. It is not the total membership. Suppose let us assume this classroom has a capacity of 100, but only 80 students are in the batch. That is the maximum. So similarly in the Lok Sabha, today the maximum membership is only 543, which they can extend up to 550. But today we have only 540. Okay. So here it is 543. Similarly, in case of Lok Sabha, what is Rajya Sabha, what is the case? 2/3 into 245. Okay. So this is the case. So they need this much amount of majority rounded off to the nearest figure. So these many members supported, then he is impeached. But few more things you have to understand. Suppose let us assume it is introduced in the Lok Sabha. It is passed in the Lok Sabha. Then the proposal will go to the next house. Suppose if it is introduced in the Rajya Sabha, if it is passed in the Rajya Sabha, then it goes to the Lok Sabha. Now, whenever the proposal will go to the next house, the president has the right to defend himself. Because we'll have to follow the principle of natural justice. He should give an opportunity to the president to explain. But this does not happen in the first house. Probably in the first house itself, he could have defended himself. But the constitution says that he should be given a right to defend himself in the second house. Why is it so? The president can defend himself. He can come on his own and he can defend himself, or he can engage a counsel, he can engage a lawyer to defend himself in the second house. Now, why specifically it is given in the second house? Because it is useless to do it in the first house. Unless and until it is passed in the first house, then only it goes to the second house. What if it is defeated in the first house itself? See, somebody may introduce, but if it is not passed with a special majority in the first house, the president doesn't have to take that step. But if it is passed in the first house, then it is serious. It has gone to the second house. So where he can defend himself. So that's the rationality behind it. But this has never happened in the history of India. It is not even a resolution has been introduced against any of the president. That's why we say that the dignity of the office of the president is one of the highest. Okay, so it has never happened. So then, in case if it goes to the second house, the president can defend himself. And after giving an opportunity, it will be put to vote. If it is passed with a special majority also in the second house, then the president's stand vote is called as impeached. Then there is no further step. So this is a way the president can be impeached. Is that clear to all of you? Yes. There is no distinction in this regard because it is the total membership. For voting also, for introduction also, anybody can do that. There is no distinction. Is that clear? Do you have any questions on this? Anyways, we'll do it a little later. Before that, I'll just complete this particular topic. Come to the next topic. Vacancy to the office of the president. So constitutionally, if you see that there are different ways by which the vacancy can arise to the office of the president. What are the ways by which the vacancy can arise to the office of the president? But what you have already understood, that there shall always be a president. Without the president, the country cannot function because the president is the head of the union executive. But the members also understood. When I say members, the members of the Constituent Assembly, they also understood that there may be circumstances the vacancy can arise to the office of the president. So they realized what are the ways by which the vacancy can arise. It can be because of the expiry of the term. Can be because of the expiry of the term, one way. It can be because of death, president suddenly dies. It can be because of removal. What does it mean by removal? Impeachment, very good. Or it can be because of resignation or otherwise. What do you mean by resignation or otherwise? It's one thing is that he can resign. We have seen that he can anytime resign. He's submitting the resignation to the vice president. He can do that anytime vacancy may arise. There's also something which is called as otherwise, which is unspecified, undefined. Can you give me an example of otherwise? We cannot go for all the reasons. Unsound? See, a person becoming unsound mind does not automatically, there won't be any vacancy. In all those cases, the duties maybe it will be considered to be an absence. If he is sick, then he is hospitalized. If he is undergoing some treatment, then it is called as absence. There is no vacancy. And in case of absence, the vice president will discharge the duties. That's a different thing as per the constitution. It can be anything, but can you just give me one example? Otherwise means, say for example, that the Supreme Court directs the president has to step down. Maybe the president election has been challenged and the election of the president has been declared invalid by the Supreme Court. It does not come under expiry, it does not come under death, it does not come under removal, it does not come under the resignation. So removal here means which is done by the parliament. The Supreme Court can declare that the election is invalid. So this is the Supreme Court declaring. One example, the Supreme Court declaring it invalid. So there are a number of ways by which the election of or the office of the president can become vacant. Now, what is very significant that you have to remember here is, on the one hand, you have seen that there should always be a president. And whenever the vacancy arises, who will discharge the duties of the president? The vice president. But try to understand, the constitution also says that if the vacancy is going to arise because of the expiry of the term, the new president should already be elected, even before the vacancy arises. But in these cases, we do not know when the president suddenly dies. So we do not know. Suddenly he is removed, he resigns, or the Supreme Court declares in all these cases. So try to understand, whenever the vacancy arises, not in all the cases, because if the vacancy is arising because of the expiry of the term, already the new president is elected. So he will assume the office. But if the vacancy arises because of all the other cases, then what is the backup plan? The vice president will discharge the duties of the president, maximum for how much time? 6 months. Within the period of 6 months, the Election Commission of India has to elect the new president. So in all these cases only, the vice president will discharge. That means one basic understanding you should have, if the vacancy is going to arise because of the expiry of the term, never ever the vice president will become the president of India. Who will become the president of India? The new president. But there could be one possibility, that the vacancy is going to arise because of the expiry of the term. The new president is elected. The new president is not able to assume the office. So in that case, then who will be the president? The outgoing president will continue to be the president of India, not the vice president. Is that clear? It's very, very important. Okay. In all other cases, it will be the vice president of India. And in case if there is any election dispute with regard to the election of the president, the election dispute can be challenged in front of only one forum, where? The Supreme Court. So now who can challenge that? It can be challenged by any candidate or by the electors. In case of electors, the petition has to be signed minimum by at least 20 electors. Okay, so that is what the law says. It is not there in the constitution. That is what the President Vice President Election Act 1952 says. And further, if you see the law, these are all additional information. Further, if you see, this particular law is also saying that there's a time limit to challenge election if the election is declared to be invalid. Does anyone know what may be the time limit? Suppose today the Election Commission is publishing in its official gazette, so and so person is declared as the president. So from the date of declaration by the Election Commission of India, the election petition has to be filed within 30 days. So if at all they want to challenge election, within how many days? Within 30 days they have to challenge as per the law. Okay, now suppose let us assume what is the date today? 8th April. So let us assume 8th April is when the Election Commission of India is declaring a particular candidate to be the president or president-elect. So someone wanted to challenge this has got 30 days. So suppose let us assume they file a petition on 1st May 2024. Is it all right for them to do this? This they can do within the limit. But 1st May, so suppose let us assume 8th April it is doing, and let us assume because the election happens a little early before the expiry of the office. Let us assume 1st May the new president is also assuming the office. New president assumes the office. But 1st May a petition has also been filed challenging his election, but the Supreme Court is going to take some time. Even if they have to dispose a case in a very fast manner, let us assume it takes 1 month time. On, let us assume 31st of May, all these things are assumptions, okay? On 31st May 2024, let us assume that the Supreme Court is coming out to the verdict that the election of president is invalid. But within this 30 days or 31 days, let us assume the president has already taken a number of action. So maybe he has appointed some of the judges, maybe he has given assent to some of the bills, maybe he has appointed the prime minister or some of the other ministers, or number of other official actions has been taken in the name of the president. So what will happen to all those orders? Because the election of the president has been declared to be invalid. The constitution says although the election of the president will be declared to be invalid, so prior to such declaration by the Supreme Court, all the official action that is done by the president will continue to be valid. Is it clear to all of you? Everything would continue to be valid. Only the election is invalid, not the action that is done by the president. How many of you think that the logic is not right? Because on the one hand, you are saying that the election itself is not valid, but on the other hand, you are saying that the action that is done by that particular person would continue to be valid. Very good, as simple as that. Because the president here is just a normal executive. He just acts on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. So he has not done anything on his own. And apart from that, even if you see, other is also the president should not do it. If you say that, so here, but it would create a lot of administrative inconvenience. So for both the reasons, probably they would have kept this particular logic. But try to understand one more information. While the Constitution says that the election of the president can be challenged, where it can be challenged? The Supreme Court. The Constitution does not specify the ground on which it can be challenged. It is for the petitioners to bring it to the notice of the Supreme Court that on so and so ground we are challenged. Because the Constitution does not specify the ground on which it has to be challenged. But one thing that is specified in the Constitution is that the ground on which it cannot be challenged. Oh, this is a ground on which you cannot challenge it. That means excluding that on any of the other ground, you may challenge it. But you cannot challenge it on this particular ground. And what is the ground on which it cannot be challenged? On the ground that when the president was elected, there was vacancy in the electoral college. That is not a ground on which you can challenge. That means, although there can be vacancy in the electoral college, you understand as to what is an electoral college for the election of the president. Although there may be vacancy in the electoral college, still the Election Commission of India can go ahead with the election because you have to elect the president on a timely manner. You cannot wait for the MPs and MLAs to be elected. If there's any vacancy, it's all right. The remaining members will take part in the presidential election. Okay, so this is not a ground on which you can challenge. Is it clear to all of you? Now come to the next topic. Let me complete completely the president and then I'll go on to the next topic. Okay, so come to the next page. Okay, so the next topic is the Vice President of India. Do you have any questions which we can solve before I go to the Vice President? think there's one question we can do it. So this we have done. This. Okay, so try to answer this question. And before this, there's also one more question. Okay, so this question. So now try to solve this question. Consider the following statements regarding the President of India. Statement 1. In case of vacancy to the office of the President, the new President must be elected within a period of 6 months in all cases. Is that true? In case of vacancy to the office of the President, the new President must be elected within a period of 6 months in all the cases, not in all the cases. In case of expiry of the term, he has to be elected even before that. Okay, so this is wrong. Any election dispute regarding the election of the President can be challenged only in the Supreme Court. That's true. So which of the statements given above are incorrect? So one more. Okay, so what is the answer in this case? The President of India can be removed by a resolution passed by special majority in both houses of the Parliament. Which of the following correctly represents the special majority in this case? What is the special majority in this case? Majority of not less than 2/3 of the total membership of the House. So as I already said, here there is no distinction between an elected member or a nominated member. Okay, so here everybody will participate. And this is also something you have to remember. While in the elections who will participate, for the removal, everybody will participate. Okay, so quickly come to one small topic, Vice President. After that, we will take a break for some time. So just I will complete the topic of the Vice President, small topic, and then we'll have a break. Okay. So come to the next topic, that is the Vice President of India. So now we are done with one executive. What is assured from whatever we discuss is one question. One question in UPSC every year from the President. Most likely 90%. Sometimes it may not be, but mostly there's a question from the President, from whatever you have discussed. Especially mostly related to the election, the electoral college, and all things. Up to the next thing, that is the Vice President. Now, similar to that of the President, the Constitution also provides for an office of the Vice President. But the position of Vice President is not as significant as that of the President. While the Constitution mandates that there shall always be a President, a similar mandate is not given for the Vice President. Why is it so? Because as per the Constitution, the only significant role that the Vice President plays is that he is an ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha. Although he is elected as a Vice President, what is the significant contribution as per his Constitution? What role he is supposed to play? He becomes what? He is ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha. Can someone tell me in your words, what does it mean by the word ex officio? By virtue of one's position or by virtue of one's status? That means the chairman of Rajya Sabha is not elected. That means whoever is the Vice President of India, by virtue of being the Vice President of India, automatically becomes the chairman of Rajya Sabha. That is what is called as the ex officio chairman. So this means you should also have an understanding that the chairman of Rajya Sabha is elected. No, nobody is elected as a chairman of Rajya Sabha. Somebody is elected as a Vice President, he automatically becomes the chairman of Rajya Sabha. So now you will understand it here why his position is not as significant as that of the President. Because there are two roles that the Vice President has to play. So normally what is his position? As long as the President is there. As long as the President is there, his function is only to act as the ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha. But when there's a vacancy that arises to the office of the President, except for the expiry of the term. So what is the role of the Vice President then? He discharges the duties of the President. He acts as the President. But for how long he acts as the President? Only for a period of 6 months, not more than that. So sometimes you might have a misunderstanding. When the President dies, suppose if the President dies after 2 years, then the vice president discharges the duties of the president. Can he continue to be the president for the remainder of the term? Not possible. There are few constitutions like that across the world. Say, for example, United States of America. That is why their vice president is very significant compared to the Indian vice president. Because there, when the president dies, and then the vice president would continue to be the president for the remainder of the term. He automatically becomes a president, but that is not the case in India. He only acts as a president. In the meantime, a new vice president is elected. Can the acting president, that is the vice president, can he contest the election? He can contest the election. That is not an issue. But whenever the new president is elected, then on the day of assuming the office, his full 5-year term will continue. That is what is the position in India. Now try to come back. So in case of vice president, try to understand why I say his position is not very significant. First thing is he normally acts as the ex officio chairman. When the president office there's an expiry, he acts as the president for some time, maximum 6 months. So, but you can ask me that his position is also very significant, because if the president suddenly dies or if there's any expiry, then who is to fill that particular post? It is the vice president. But if the vice president is not there, then also it can be taken care by the Chief Justice of India. The Chief Justice of India is not there, senior most judge of the Supreme Court. So it is not significant. But you can ask me one question: who will act as the chairman of Rajya Sabha? Because the vice president is the ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha. Suppose the same thing can come here also. In case of the vice president also, his office may, the vacancy may arise of all the reasons. It may be because of what? It may be because of the expiry of the term. It may be because of his death. It may be because of his resignation. He can also be removed. We'll try to understand his cause of removal. He can also be removed. Or his election can also be challenged in the Supreme Court. Supreme Court has invalidated his election. But in all these cases, no issue. Nobody will act as a vice president. Try to understand. So when the president is not there, the vice president is acting as a president. But if there's a vacancy to the office of the vice president, nobody is going to act as a vice president. Because what is his official function? It's to ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha. So when the vice president is not there, of course, there is no chairman to the Rajya Sabha. But at that point of time, the deputy chairman of Rajya Sabha will perform the duties of the chairman of Rajya Sabha. So his question is not that significant. Okay, try to understand that. So the constitution only says that there shall be a vice president, and then he normally is the ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha. The only condition that the constitution gives is that whoever is a vice president should not hold on to any office of office. That means except for the post of vice president, where he automatically becomes a ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha, he should not hold on to any of the other positions. Otherwise, what is his office of profit is not different. And what if there is vacancy? Apart from acting as ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha, what if there is a vacancy to the office of the president? So we already seen that the vacancy to the office of the president can arise because of 5 reasons. But if the vacancy is arising because of the expiry of the term, the vice president does not become the president. But for the other reasons, he becomes a president. But for maximum time, how much time? 6 months. But one more detail that I have to add, there's a difference between the word vacancy and absence. So the vice president acts as a president not only during the vacancy of the office of the president, but also during the absence. So what difference does it make when I say absence and vacancy? Are they one and the same, or are they different? So how is absence different from vacancy? In absence, somebody is occupying the office. The president is there, but the president is absent from the office. But in vacancy, there is no one as the president. Maybe the president has fallen sick. President is there, but he has fallen sick. That is basically what is called as absence. So even during absence, the vice president can discharge the duties of the president. In fact, it has happened in the history of India. The first president of India, Mr. Rajendra Prasad. So he has fallen sick. In 1960, he has fallen sick. And then I think he was hospitalized for almost 2 months. And during that time, the vice president discharged the duties of the president. But one thing that you have to understand is, in case of vacancy, there's a time limit. For how much time? 6 months. But in case of absence, there's no time. In case of absence, it can be even 1 year. But as long as his term is not getting expired. So he is also absent and his term is also getting expired, the new president will come. But the absence is, there's no time limit that is specified in the constitution. The vice president can continue to hold the office and discharge the duties. Which once it has happened, although I think at that point of time, because of some logistical reasons, it has happened. But today, I don't think such logistical issues will come with advancement in information technology and communications and all those things. The president would be in a position to discharge his duties. But it happened in 1960 again. The same example, Rajendra Prasad was on an official visit to USSR at that point of time. He advised then Vice President Radhakrishnan to discharge the duties because of absence. Or maybe I'm not sure whether he's not in official visit, probably on his own personal visit. So something is there, but as far as I learned, it was only an official visit, but it was considered to be an absence. And he advised the Vice President to perform the duties at that point of time, which the answer is yes. But of late, we do not have such a scenario. So this is something that you have to understand. And then the election of Vice President. Okay, I'll just take 10 minutes more and then have it. Can I continue? Okay, so come to the election of the Vice President. So if you see the election of the Vice President, again an electoral college. So you'll have to compare between the President and the Vice President. So here also electoral college. But here the electoral college is very restricted in size. Because someone who is a president who represents the entire nation, but the Vice President does not represent the entire nation. Okay, so they restricted the size of the electoral college. So here the electoral college is only the members of both the houses of the parliament. So there it also includes the elected representatives from the states. But here it is not the case. Okay, so members of both houses, but then again, there if you see, it is the elected members of the parliament. Here it is the members of the parliament. That means here it also includes the nominated members. Okay, so that's distinction should be very clear. The nominated members are also part of it. But then the election system is the same, proportional representation by means of single transfer vote, and the voting is by secret ballot. Just remember the mechanism, nothing more than this is important. But one of the condition which is given is that someone who is elected as a Vice President should not be a member of parliament or a member of state legislature. That means you should have an understanding that can a member of parliament or a member of state legislature contest election to the office of the Vice President? Of course, yes. But once they get elected, they automatically cease to be a member of parliament or a member of state legislature. Okay. So election is possible, but not after election. And then certain qualifications has been given to the office of the Vice President as well. So what are those qualifications? That means what qualifications one has to possess to contest the election in the first place. So these are the qualifications. First is he should be a citizen, completed 35 years of age, qualified for election to Rajya Sabha. For the president, what you have seen, qualified for election to Lok Sabha, which is again given under Article 84. And the qualifications to contest election to Rajya Sabha is also given under Article 84. Can anyone tell me the qualification that you have seen for the president? The only difference is there, someone wanted to contest election to the Lok Sabha shall not be less than 25 years of age. But here, someone wanted to contest election to the Rajya Sabha should not be less than 30 years of age. But it hardly matters because the age is overruled here. It is completed 35 years of age. So whatever qualifications we have seen for the president will completely apply in case of the Vice President as well. Can you just tell me what are the qualifications you have seen in case of the president? Anyone? All the qualifications. Citizen, completed 35 years of age, subscribe to an oath in front of an authorized authority. So here also someone wanted to contest election has to subscribe to an oath in front of an authorized authority, which will be appointed by the Election Commission of India. Any other qualification? He should be an elector from any constituency. So in this case also, the Vice President should be an elector from any constituency. That is also there. And apart from that, he should not hold any office of profit. So all these conditions will apply here also. Although it says that he should not hold any office of profit, few exceptions are given. So what are the exceptions? Certain officers are exempted and not considered to be an office of profit. A sitting president, a sitting vice president, sitting governors of any of the state, a serving minister, either under the central government or under the state government. That means in these cases, they don't have to resign while contesting election to the office of the vice president. If they are in any of the other office, if they are occupying any of the other office, political office or executive, permanent executive office, then they have to resign. Okay. Is it clear? Okay, so come to the next thing, the term of the office of the vice president. So similarly, as we have seen, everything is almost the same as I've seen in case of the president. Any difference, I'll let you know. So here also 5 years, and this 5 years will start from the day he assumes the office. And he can also resign at any time. While the president can do it to the vice president can do it to the president. He can also be removed from his office. But is any doubt? Any doubt? 15,000 rupees. These are all not mentioned in the constitution. It is only there in the elections, election of president and vice president act. So 15,000 rupees they have to deposit as a caution deposit. In case of president, but in case of vice president also, I think it is the same. But anyways, I'll verify that. But these information are very insignificant. It is refundable if they do not get a minimum number of vote, which is there in the law, 1/6 of the total polled votes or qualified candidate. So if they don't get that percentage of vote, then it is not refundable. Otherwise, it is refundable. But these are all very insignificant information. Okay, so come to the next thing, that he can also be removed. So in this case also, who is the authority to remove them? The parliament. See, our idea is only to get the 80% of the questions. It does not make mistakes in the 80% of the questions. We are not going for every nook and corner, which is whatever is in the constitution is the most important thing. Most likely they have to be asked. I'm covering few other extra information in certain topic which may be part of current affairs. Something has happened in the current affairs, so that's why I'm touching up certain extra information. Otherwise, I'm not touching it. Okay, so parliament is authority, but there are few differences if you see. While in case of the president, I said that a resolution has to be introduced. There also it can be introduced by any MP. A 14 days notice has to be given. So here also a 14 days notice has to be given. But the difference is, I'll just quickly write down the difference. You can also note down the difference. So here itself I write it. Case of president and in case of the vice president. While in case of the president, it can be introduced in either house. Whereas in case of the vice president, it can be introduced only in the Rajya Sabha. While in case of the president, before introducing, it has to be supported by how many members? 1/4. Before introducing. There is no such requirement here. But what is common is it can be introduced by an MP. It has to be introduced by 14 days prior notice in both cases. So here the majority that is required is 2/3 majority. 2/3 of total membership. Or in other words, special majority in both the houses. However, what is the majority in case of the vice president? What is the majority in case of vice president? What does it mean by present and voting? 2/3 of present and voting. Okay, so this is very, very important. So in case of the vice president, the majority is different in both the houses. So it can be introduced only in the Rajya Sabha, and it has to be passed in the Rajya Sabha by effective majority. So make a note of this. In Rajya Sabha, it is effective majority. And in Lok Sabha, it is simple majority. Lok Sabha, it is simple majority. Do not make a mistake. Okay, so the majority is not the same. Okay, so can someone tell me what do you understand by the effective majority? Total? I repeat that. No, there's only one condition when it comes to effective majority. Only for the special majority, there are multiple conditions. But for simple majority, absolute majority, effective majority, there's only one condition. So what is effective majority? Has anyone heard of this? Or if I put it in one way, it is a majority of the effective membership of the House. Majority of the effective membership of the House. So now the question is, how do you calculate the effective membership? Majority of the effective membership. So we'll have to calculate the effective membership next. So how do you calculate the effective membership? Is total membership minus vacancies. Suppose let us assume Rajya Sabha. What is the total member? Sorry, Lok Sabha. What is the total membership of Lok Sabha? 543. Suppose there are 3 vacancies. 3 MP seats are vacant for any reason. Maybe some MP has died after the election. Some MP has resigned. Some MP has been disqualified. There can be, these are all called as casual vacancies. Casual vacancies means it is because of all these reasons. So suppose let us assume 3 MPs, there's a casual vacancy. So in this case, what is the effective membership? Effective membership is 540. So what is the majority of the effective membership? 270. Okay, so in this case, the effective majority is 270. Or in other words, if you look into the constitution, if the constitution uses the majority of the then members, have you ever read this? The majority of the then members or the majority of the then members. So the majority of the then members means total membership minus vacancies, or it is the effective membership. So this is basically what is the effective membership and the effective majority. So in the Rajya Sabha, what is the majority that is required? It is effective majority. So what is the total membership of Rajya Sabha? 245. So if 5 vacancies are there, 240 divided by 2 plus 1. So it would be 121. That is the effective membership. If it is passed with the effective membership in the Rajya Sabha, then in the Lok Sabha, then it comes to the Lok Sabha. In the Lok Sabha, it requires simple majority. And I hope you know what is simple majority. Can someone tell me what is a simple majority? It is the majority of present and voting. I hope that students understand because these are all very basics. So I'm not going much to this, but what is the majority that is required in the Lok Sabha? Simple majority. Okay, let me give one small information. Suppose you have this information that the Lok Sabha has got 540 members. What would be the simple majority? What would be simple majority in this case? Because in the Rajya Sabha, it is effective majority. Lok Sabha, we need simple majority. I'm giving one information to all of you. It is already passed with effective majority in the Rajya Sabha, and now it requires a simple majority, and the Lok Sabha has got 540 members. So what would be the simple majority? How many of you think it is 270? So the information that I have given is insufficient. You cannot make your own assumptions. When I say that 540 members are there, not necessarily all the 540 members are present. I have only given you the effective membership, that is 540. But here it is not the effective membership. It requires first information, how many members are present. Then that information is also not sufficient. Suppose let us say 500 members are present. Will you be able to calculate the majority? Some members may abstain from voting. You never know how many members are actually voting in the House. So the information that is required to calculate the simple majority is how many members are present in the House on that day, and among those members, how many members are voting. So present and voting, both the information is available. So suppose let us assume 400 members are present and voting. Let us assume. This is the information that you need to calculate simple. Now tell me what would be simple majority. That means the idea is out of the 540 members on a given day, 500 members are present in the House. Out of the 500 members present in the House, 400 are actually voting. either in favor or against. So to be passed, it has to be voted in favor of how many people? 201. That is basically the same. Is that clear? So try to understand the difference between how the president and the vice president. Okay, so that is basically the thing that you have to understand. And here also, similar to that of the president, the vice president can continue to hold the office even after the expiry of the term on only one condition. Which condition? If the successor has not assumed the office. So similar to that of the president, same thing. So here also the vacancy can arise because of number of reasons. But here also the constitution says, if the vacancy is going to arise to the office of the vice president because of the expiry of the term, the new vice president has to be elected even. But if the new vice president is not able to assume the office for some reason, the existing vice president would continue to hold office. But if the vacancy arises because of the other reason, suppose let us assume because of the reasons of death, if the vacancy arises because of the other reasons, because of death, because of resignation, because of removal, or otherwise here means the vice president election can also be declared to be null and void by the Supreme Court. It can be challenged. Because of other reasons, then who would act as a vice president? Nobody would act as a vice president. That's exactly what you should understand. There's no need for the vice president. Nobody would act as a vice president, but then the deputy chairman of Rajya Sabha would act as a chairman of Rajya Sabha. Is that clear? So the constitution only says, if the vacancy arises any of these reasons, then the new vice president has to be elected within how much time? As soon as possible. There's no time. But in case of president, president has to be elected within 6 months. Because the office of vice president is not very significant because you have the backup. The deputy chairman is there. The only problem is if the president dies and there's no vice president. And in that case, now try to understand, don't have this confusion that the deputy chairman is now the chairman and he can act as the president. No. The vice president is not there, president dies, then who will act as the president? Chief Justice. And if he is not there, we have the other contingencies. Is it clear to all of you? So his election can also be challenged. And if his election is challenged in the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court declares his election to be invalid. Suppose let us assume. All those prior actions will continue to be same. And here also the constitution does not say as to what is the ground on which election can be challenged. It only says what is the ground on which the election cannot be challenged. Same as that of the president. What is the ground on which the election of the president cannot be challenged? Vacancy in the electoral college. So similarly here, the election cannot be challenged on the ground that there is vacancy in the electoral college. One last information. While the president assumes the office, before assuming the office, who will administer the oath? The Chief Justice of India. So here in this case, while the vice president is assuming the office, it is not the Chief Justice, it is the president himself will administer. Okay, so be clear about this. Okay, so all the information I think mostly we have covered with regard to the president. So let me see if there's anything else. Okay, the next thing is governor. So we'll discuss this after the break. The only thing before that, so let me see if there's any questions related to the vice president. Yes. That I have to see it in the law, but as far as I can concern, here also it is either the Secretary General Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, but I'm not very sure. I'll clarify. Okay, but having that topic, so whatever I added is based on the current affairs, but this election of vice president is always a very insignificant topic. So if you need that information, I'll give it, but I have not changed it in the act, and that is not given in the constitution. Okay. So normally he assumes the office after the oath is administered. So most likely maybe on the same day, but it is not necessarily on the same day. Normally, practically it happens on the same day, but theoretically talking may not be on the same day, and the constitution is silent on this. The constitution only says that he can assume the office only after the oath is administered. It might be possible the oath is administered, but he has not assumed the office. But normally it does not happen like that. So on the same day, the oath is administered and then he assumes the office. Do you have any questions on vice president? Okay, so try to solve this question on the vice president. Which of the following are part of the electoral college of the vice president of India? So who is the part of the electoral college? The elected members of the parliament. Are they part? Elected members of state legislature, nominated members of the parliament. So combinedly, they are part of the electoral. The answer is 1 and 3. So don't be in a hurry. That think that no, these members of the parliament, and you don't keep that to be wrong, because all these things are likely to happen in the examination. You have to control your nerve a little. Do you have any other questions from the? So have a look into this question. Consider the following statements regarding the removal of the Vice President of India. He or she is removed by a resolution passed by special majority in both houses. Is it requiring special majority? So we have just seen that the majority is what? Effective majority in case of which house? Effective majority in case of Rajya Sabha. And what is the majority in case of Lok Sabha? Simple majority in case of. This is very, very important. Most of the students may not have a proper understanding here. In fact, do you know that whenever a specific majority is not mentioned in the constitution, which majority has to be taken into account? Whenever they say that it has to be passed by both houses of the parliament, and I say it has to be passed by both houses of the parliament, but specifically nothing is mentioned, then in that case it is simple. If a specific majority is required, then it has to be explicitly. The resolution for his or her removal can be introduced in either houses. Is that true? It's not possible. It can be introduced only in the Rajya Sabha. The resolution for his removal can be introduced only after giving 14 days of prior notice to the vice president. Is that true? That is true. Which of the statements given above? How many of the statements given above is not incorrect? 2 only. And also make sure that you don't jump to conclusion, because certain prejudice we carry as a part of being in the process, that we always assume that they're asking only the correct statement, but we can ask the incorrect thing also. So be clear about all these things. So do you have any other questions apart from this for the vice president? Please repeat your question. Okay. In the second house, it is not explicitly mentioned for the vice president. It is explicitly mentioned for the president, but no such information is given there. But normally we follow the process of natural justice. Maybe it is mentioned in the President Vice President Elections Act or any of the other act, but it is not explicitly mentioned in the constitution for the vice president. Any other doubts from any of the students? Okay, so take a 10 minutes break, or rather 15 minutes. What is the time now? 4. We'll again meet at 5:05. Okay, we'll just continue with the governor topic. The 5. You want 20 minutes? Okay, we'll have to walk. Okay, so because if we take the break now, then probably we'll have to extend the class. I have certain things to cover. Okay, we'll meet at 5:10. Okay. Online students will again meet at 5:10. Okay.